Shalom, everyone. Today we're going to go into a topic that deals with the Festival of Shavuot, or as you might know it, the Festival of Weeks. Another name we have from the New Testament is the Festival of Pentecost, which means 50. It is 50 days after the waving of the first fruits of the barley that's during the week of unleavened bread, which is associated with Passover. So this is a major ceremony. We have two major ceremonies that occur during the Festival of Shavuot. The first one is going to be the bringing of the bikurim, or the bringing of the first fruits, which we're going to talk about today. The second one deals with what's called the shtei halekim, or the two lambs that are placed between the two loaves of bread, the two loaves of bread and waved before the Lord. Now, we're not going to cover that today. We're going to specifically talk about the bringing of the first fruits. We find this a number of places in the scripture, so let me read a few of these. We find out of the book of Shemot, Exodus, there's actually two major ones. So I'm going to go to Shemot, chapter 23, and here I've been reading from a Kohen Tanakh, which is an Orthodox Tanakh, and let me find our place. We're told in verse 15, 3 times thou shalt keep a festival to me in the year. Thou shalt keep the festival of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded you, in the time appointed in the month of Aviv, for in it you did come out from Mitzrayim, or from the land of Egypt. And none shall appear before me empty. In other words, that you brought offerings at this time. And the festival of harvest. Okay, now, generally we call Shavuot by that name, which means weeks, okay? So we have 7 weeks, and then we have the festival of Shavuot. So it's 7 sevens, okay? However, here, and we're going to follow this out. This is going to be in verse 16. It says, Vehag Katzir, okay? Let me spell Katzir for you. That's spelled K-A-T-Z-I-R, Katzir. The first fruits of your labors. Now, we want to get this. It's Bikurai, I'm going to spell that for you, B-I-K-K-U-R-A-I, okay? Bikurai. That's the first fruits, Masakha, which is of your labors, okay? The first fruit of your labors. And so the festival, one of its names is going to be Hag HaBikurim. We also have this name of Hag HaKatzir, or the first fruits. The first fruits of your harvest. Katzir would mean harvest. It says, let me find my place here. The first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field, in the festival of ingathering. This is going to be the festival of Sukkot, where it's called Hag HaAsif. Now, a lot of people are unaware of this, but most of our festivals have different names, multiple names. And so you can kind of relate to that in the Gentile world. I mean, you have Thanksgiving. Well, you could call it Pilgrim's Day, Turkey Day, different names. These names are kind of helpful because they're descriptive of some aspect of that particular festival. So we have 3 times of the year, all thy males shall appear before the Lord God. And it says, thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until the morning. The first of the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring to the house of the Lord thy God, and thou shalt not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Okay, so we see in this passage twice it's going to talk about bringing the first fruits, bringing the bikurim. Now we're going to go to a parallel passage that's found also in the book of Shemot. This is going to be in chapter 34. And we have, let me find our place here. We have in verse 18. So chapter 34, Exodus 34, verse 18. The festival of unleavened bread shalt thou keep 7 days. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread as I commanded you in the time of the month of Aviv. For in the month of Aviv You did come out from Mitzrayim. That's word for word as what we saw in chapter 23. All that opens the womb is mine, and every firstling among your cattle, whether ox or sheep, that is male, but the firstling of an ass thou shalt redeem with a lamb. And if thou redeem it not, then shalt thou break its neck. That's a really interesting story. We'll go into that another time. All the firstborn of thy sons thou shalt redeem. So notice it's talking about the firstborn of your animals, your cattle, your sheep, your lambs, your goats, your beef. Now it's talking about the firstborn of your sons. And then it goes into, it says, all the firstborn of thy sons thou shalt redeem, and none shall appear before me empty. 6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. In plowing and in harvest thou shalt rest. It's talking about the Shabbat. And thou shalt observe the Feast of Weeks, okay, the Festival of Shavuot. Now this is in verse 22. And let me go down to 22 in Hebrew. And so it says, Vehag Shavuot, okay? The Festival of Weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest. And so we have Taseh Lakha Bikarei. Bikarei, that's the same word we had before. Remember the first fruits, the Bikarei. And then it goes on farther to give you of the wheat harvest. And the festival of gathering again, Hag HaAsif, at the year's end. So here in the book of Shemot, we have twice that the people are commanded to bring the first fruits before the Lord. And specifically, it's very specific. It tells us that this is to be done at the season of Shavuot. Yeah, I'm going to go to several sources here. This is from the Mishnah. This is the Kahati Mishnah. And behind me, I have a whole set, 21 volumes. And so this is just one of the volumes. This is from the order Bikurim, or Seder Bikurim, which deals, not Bikurim, but Seder Zeraim, which means seeds or agriculture. So we've gone to a book within that section or that order called Bikurim, which means first fruits. And so I'm going to read the recitation that is done by the people when they bring these first fruits, but I want to develop it up for you. To me, I love the ceremonies of the temple. This is one of the most exciting ceremonies. It is one that not only do just the visual aspect of how it was done, the words that were said, the ceremony that was involved, but unlike the other ceremonies which were done on the Temple Mount, a major part of this, I can re-walk the steps. I can do it as a rehearsal of what was done. And I'm going to tell you about that as we go along. So I'm going to pick up in the introduction here to Tractate Bikurim, and then we'll go to the third chapter, and we'll read how the ceremony was done. This passage elaborates the Bikurim. Now, it's talking about Deuteronomy chapter 26 and the first 11 verses. This passage elaborates the Bikurim commandment, briefly mentioned earlier in Exodus 23:19, we read that, and Exodus 34:26, we read that. The first of the first fruits of your land. Oh, okay. Now that becomes specific. I had a man come to me and he said, I'm a farmer and I want to go to Jerusalem and take the first fruits of my crops because it's commanded in the scripture. And I tried to tell him, well, there's several reasons that you shouldn't do that. Number one, it is a commandment for in the land. It only applies to the land of Israel. Number two, it is a temple ceremony. So because there is no temple today, it's not performed, but we look forward to the time when it will be done in the future. Okay, so it shall bring to the house of the Lord your God. Furthermore, and this is from the book of Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 18 and verse 13. It says, furthermore, Aaron the priest, Aaron, is told the first ripe fruit of all that is in the land, which they shall bring to the Lord, shall be yours. Every one that is clean in your house shall eat of it. So the bikurim that is brought is going to become the property of the Kohanim. It is the property of the priesthood for them to eat, to sell, to do whatever with. Bikurim denotes tree or ground produce, which ripen first. These we are commanded to take to the temple in Jerusalem and present them to the Kohanim. However, the law of bikurim applies only to the 7 species with which Eretz Israel is blessed, as explained in Mishnah chapter 1, verse 3. Let me go ahead and read that. It says, one does not bring bikurim from other than the 7 species. Now, the 7 species we call Shiva Minim. Shiva means 7, Minim means species. Not from the dates of the hills, nor from the fruits of the valleys, nor from oil olives, which are none of the choicest. One does not bring bikurim before the Shavuot festival. The men about Zevaim brought their bikurim before the Shavuot festival, and they did not accept these from them because of what is written. Exodus 23:16. And in the Feast of Harvest, okay? That's that Hag HaKatzir, the first fruits of your labors which you have sown in the field. All right, so let's go back to our introduction here. It says the bikurim applies only to the 7 species with which Eretz Israel is blessed, explained in Mishnah 1:3, wheat, barley, wine, figs, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. Now, we have these listed off for us in the book of Deuteronomy. In chapter 8, verse 8, you might remember Deuteronomy 8:10, that's where we have the command that after you eat, that you are to bless the Lord for the food that you have eaten. It's called the Birkat Hamazon. Okay, so let me read Devarim 8:8. It says, actually I'm going to start in verse 7. For the Lord thy God brings thee into a good land, a land of watercourses, of fountains and depths that spring out of valleys and hills. And then verse 8, a land of wheat and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey. And when it speaks of honey, it's speaking of the date honey, the honey that's made from the date fruit. And so, fig trees, pomegranates, land of olive oil and honey, and then it goes on in the rest of the passage, okay? But that lists our 7 species. The bikurim is one of the things for which the Torah did not establish any measure. In other words, and this is discussed in the Mishnah and in the Tractate Peah, in chapter 1, Mishnah 1, and what it says is that we are not told specifically in the Torah what is the minimum amount that a person should bring of the 7 species. However, the Sanhedrin set this for the people. We'll read about that. The sages, however, according to a Baraita. What's a Baraita? A Baraita means it is a ruling that's not found in the Mishnah. It's not found in the next book after the Mishnah called the Tosefta, means additions. So Baraita is going to be a ruling or a halakha that is in neither one of these sets. Okay, so we have a Baraita, according to a Baraita in the Jerusalem Talmud, fixed it as the 60th part of such produce. Okay, so you were to bring 1/60th of your olives, 1/60th of your wheat, 1/60th of your barley, 1/60th of your pomegranates, and so forth. Okay? So, the mandatory bikurim recital, which we'll be doing shortly, as specified in the above passage, forms part of a bikurim presentation. Thus, on meeting the priest in the temple, the bearer of the bikurim basket first renders thanks to the Almighty. I profess this day to the Lord your God that I have come to the land which the Lord swore to our fathers to give us. In other words, with bikurim. in hand. In other words, with the fruits in your hand. I express my gratitude to the Lord for bringing me to this land. And then he's going to recite. We're going to go through this, but let me tell you a little bit about it, because when we're going through the ceremony, it's kind of difficult to stop, talk, explain. But we have this, what does the man bringing the Bikurim say? What does he do with the priest, and how is everything presented? Now, this text that he is going to recite, I'm going to do for you in a few minutes, is known as that of the Bikra Bikurim, or the Vidui al Bikurim, which is the profession over the Bikurim, over the first fruits. In other words, it's a prayer of thanksgiving to the Lord for graciously delivering us from Egypt, bringing us into a land flowing with milk and honey. Now, I want to show you a book. This is a book from Neot Kenamin. It's called Nature in Our Biblical Heritage. These are the leading authorities in the land of Israel on the botanicals that are found in the Bible, the Mishnah, all the various Jewish writings. Fascinating place to go. Now, in Nature in Our Biblical Heritage, it's one of 3 major books they have. They also have Trees in Our Biblical Heritage and Deserts and Shepherds in Our Biblical Heritage. They have a special section called the 7 varieties, and below it says the tempters. And so I want to show you, it starts right here. There's numerous photographs, but it's going to go from page 30 all the way through page 42. So 12 pages of material just on the 7 species with lots of pictures. But one of the fascinating points that they bring up is why these 7 species? I mean, the land of Israel has many, many other plants. I mean, it has all types of nuts, and it has all types of just wonderful produce that comes from the land. But why these 7? Well, it comes down that these 7 happen to be used in pagan ceremonies. And so God is going to set this apart, that you will bring these to me and not be tempted to worship other gods. And so you want to get this. You want to get this book and read this section. It will really be fascinating to you. All right. Now, we're going to go to the Mishnah, and we're going to go to chapter 3. In chapter 3, it goes first into, we have 2 sections. One is going to be the separating of the Bikurim, the separating of the first fruits, and then the second will be the actual bringing. You have the same thing in tithing. There is the commandment of separating, and then the commandment of bringing. So we have the land of Israel. Picture it in your mind. First off, the land of Israel is going to be divided for the time of King David into 24 sections. Now, each section has a major city. It might not have been a huge city, but it's very easy to relate to. Here in the United States, we have counties, and then we have a county seat. And so I live in Texas, and we have counties. In Louisiana, they instead of counties, they have parishes, but they have a parish seat. Okay, so here they're going to call each of these areas, these districts, they're going to be called a Ma'amad. Okay, and so there's going to be a Ma'amad center. Okay, so bear that in mind. How does one separate the Bikurim? When a man goes down into his field and sees a ripe fig, a ripe cluster of grapes, a ripe pomegranate, he ties reed grass around it and says, "Let these be Bikurim." Rabbi Shimon says, nevertheless, he designates them again as Bikurim after they are plucked from the soil. So when you have your first fruit springs up out of the ground, you're going to take 1/60 of that, and you're going to mark it with this reed grass. You have separated It is not yours anymore. It now belongs to the Lord. So we're going to go to the Mishnah 2. How did they take up the Bikurim? All the cities of the Ma'aban. Okay, remember that's your 24 districts. Gather in the city of the Ma'aban and spend the night in the open place of the city. And they did not enter the houses. In the early rising, the officer said, now this is from Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 5. And he would actually sing this, arise, let us go up to Zion, to the house of the Lord our God. Now, when I take my tours to Israel, we go to a place called Korzin. Korzin's in the Galilee. It's going to be, if you picture the northern end of the Sea of the Galilee, it's going to be off to your northwest. And it's not very far. I mean, you can see the Sea of Galilee from Korzin. And it's one of the places in the New Testament that Yeshua did a number of his miracles. But Korzin, much of the town has been uncovered. And what they found in the town was the city square, the town square. And so I take my group and I have them around the square and I go into the middle. Now, the person that is going to lead this procession is called the Hamadude, okay, which means a permanent official. And so he's going to say, arise, or he's going to say, arise and let us go up to Zion, to the house of the Lord our God. Now, in our Mishnah, it tells us that nobody slept in the houses. Why not? Because they might contract an impurity that would disqualify them from going to the temple. So they camp in the open. Now, when this happens, all the people are going to respond. They're going to sing from the book of Ezekiel, it is good to go to the house of the Lord. And so they're going to step out into the square. Now they're going to start a procession down towards Jerusalem. Now picture this. Picture like a wheel, like a wagon wheel. And you have the spokes. Jerusalem is the center. And all these spokes, in each of these districts, the same ceremony is being gone through. It's being repeated over and over and over again. And so then we have 24 groups. And now as they start, they're going to have their first fruits they've gathered. They have 7 different species together, and they're going to place them into baskets. Now, here's how it goes. It says, those near brought figs and grapes, and those far brought dried figs and raisins. And the ox went before them, with its horns gold-plated and an olive crown on its head. The flute played before them until they arrived close to Jerusalem. Now, the flutist is very interesting. First off, the flute is going to be a reed instrument, but it has 2 reeds that are coming out. And so the flutist, the word for flute in Hebrew is hayil. You might recognize it, similar to the word challah. Challah is the bread that we offer on the Shabbat. Okay, but challah means to be purest. The flute is a reed that has been purest. So the man blowing the flute is called the Ish Halil, the purest one. Immediately we have a picture of Messiah. The purest one, the flutist, is going to be leading the procession as they go from their district towards Jerusalem. Behind it will be an ox with its horns plated with gold or silver. It has an olive crown woven through its head. And so we have, when they arrive close to Jerusalem, they sit before them and bedecked their bikurim. Now, at this point, I want to go over and I'm going to show you on a map of where they arrive. And we're going to talk a little bit about the procession. So join with me as we go over here. All right, here we have a map that shows Jerusalem, the early 1st century BCE. Okay, so about 100 years before the time of Yeshua, not quite. He was actually born in the latter part of the 1st century BCE. But here we have the oldest part of Jerusalem. This is called Ir David, the city of David. Now, the Shiloh pool is going to be located right approximately here. This is where they would go. And so, several years ago, we used to go to where we thought the Shiloh was. It was a huge square that was covered with vegetation, but it very obviously looked like it was a pool. And lo and behold, they began to excavate it. This is a tour map. All of this is a national park now for Israel. And right here, where you see this big area of vegetation, is where they discovered the steps of the Shiloh pool. And they have excavated the eastern side and just a little bit at the corner over on the southern side. The rest is under the control of a church, which is not allowing them to be able to excavate. Now, back years ago, this was Professor Ronnie Reich and Baruch Yuval were the excavators there, and they had begun to uncover the ancient street, that street that led them up to, that was taken up, coming all the way up. In fact, let me show you. I'm going to kind of mark this out. This is where the ancient street was. There is a tunnel here today. Now, why a tunnel? It wasn't a tunnel in that time. Rather, what it was an open street. There were buildings on the side, and the people would come up, and all of Jerusalem had turned out. The entire community had come, and they are welcoming the people. They are doing blessings to God. The people have their first fruits. Give me a second here. They have the first fruits, and here I have some pomegranates. I have some grapes. You have different farmers. Not all the fruits are going to be in season at the time, but they fill these up and they put them on their shoulder as they come up. And as they go, they are singing the Psalms of Ascent, Psalms 120 through 135. And all the people, it's like this huge parade as the people came up bearing these gifts before the Lord. Now, that tunnel has been open to the public. That tunnel has been open to the public, and I've been through it about 4 or 5 times now. And it's one of the greatest spiritual moments in my life each time I go through. Because while the tunnel is damp, and at places it's narrow, and there's not enough room for 2 people to walk side by side, sometimes you have to duck your head because it's really crude inside. I've had people go and they say, why do I want to go through this damp, dirty place? I mean, it's well lit. There's lights all the way and everything. Well, but why do I want to go through that? You're missing the whole thing. When I go through, I don't see all the mud. I don't see all the places I have to duck my head or where it's narrow. What I see is the open street. What I see are the houses on the side and the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are lining the street. They took off their job. It wasn't a holiday. It wasn't a day that you get paid whether you're there or not. They came in order to worship God with these people and greet these people as they came up. But wait a second, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are going to do this 24 times. And everybody's going to be arriving within 2 or 3 days. So it's one parade after another parade after another parade. Now, it gets more exciting as we go along. Because it says, when they arrived close to Jerusalem, they sent before them and bedecked their bikurim. They beautified their gifts, the baskets. The supervisors, the deputies, and the treasurers went out to meet them. These are the delegates for the temple. They went out according to the rank of those entering. And all the craftsmen in Jerusalem stood before them and greeted them, our brethren, men of such and such a place. Shalom Aleichem, come in peace. We go to the next Mishnah. The flute played before them. So our flutists, they have the flutist before them. They have the calf that is gilded with, or the ox that is its horns gilded with gold or silver. The olive through its horns. They have the male singers and the female singers and all the people bearing their fruits. The flute played before them until they reached the Temple Mount. When they reached the Temple Mount, even King Agrippa would take the basket on his shoulder and enter until he reached the temple court. Okay, so I want to move this. And here, the people are coming from the south, and they're going to come through these tunnels. These are called the Hatikva passageways. I've had the opportunity to be in both of these. It's very rare for people to be allowed to go under the Temple Mount, but several years ago, we were allowed to go up and down in this tunnel maybe a dozen times, and in this tunnel I've been about 4 times. And so we have, when they reach the court, in other words, they come out and they have arrived in here, and let's see, when they reach the temple court, until he reached the temple court, when he reached the temple court, and specifically what it says, when he reached the Azarah. So he has come up through here, and he has entered in from the east, and he has come up this way, and they have entered the Azarah, the inner court. Till he reached the temple court. When he reached the temple court, the Levites intoned the song. Now they were standing, this is going to be the Levitical choir that's on duty. They were standing on this platform called the Dukan, and they began to sing, I will extol you, O Lord, for you have raised me up and have not allowed my enemies to rejoice over me. That's Psalm 30. And they specifically, verse 2, but they're going to sing the entire song. The pigeons were on the baskets, were burnt offerings, and what they had in their hand, they gave to the priest. While the basket was still on his shoulder, he read from, I profess this day to you, Lord, your God, from Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 3, until the end of the passage. And it says that, I'm going to skip this because I'm going to do the ceremony for you. He is going to come to, a wandering Aramean was my father, until the end of the passage, and placed it by the side of the altar, and he prostrated and went out. Okay, now I want to go back here, and I want to do the actual blessing and show you how it was done. So here's the first 3 verses. It says, this is from Deuteronomy chapter 26, and it shall be, when you come into the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell therein, then you shall take the first of all the fruit of the earth, which you shall bring of your land, that the Lord your God gives you, and shall put it in a basket, and shall go to the place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. And you come to the Kohen, to the priest, that shall be in those days, and say to him. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our baskets. And in the baskets, we're going to have layers. So that they would put, for instance, wheat in the bottom, and then they're going to have a layer of, say, barley, and then a layer of olives, and then a layer of grapes, and they won't even take pigeons and tie them onto the side. Now, the rich will bring their fruits in silver and gold buckets or baskets, while the poor will bring them in wicker. Now, give me a second. I'm going to get the first fruits. So here are our first fruits, okay? So this representation. The person bringing them, he has them on his shoulder. A Kohen will come over to him. And so each person, there's going to be thousands of these baskets and so forth. He will come over, and so he's going to start the recitation, and let me read this. What he says, it says, this is what you say to him, I profess this day to the Lord your God that I have come to the land which the Lord swore to your fathers to give us. And the priest shall take the basket out of your hand and set it down before the altar of the Lord your God, and you shall speak and say before the Lord your God, a wandering Aramean was my father. And he went down to Egypt and sojourned there, few in number. Now, I'm going to continue this, but what happens at this, he takes it down, and he has it, and the man is going to hold it by the top of the basket. Now, the Cohen, the priest, is going to come by his side, and he's going to take it from beneath. Now, they're going to do what's called tenufa. Tenufa means waving. This is a wave offering. Now, today when we do tenufa, like at Sukkot, where we wave our arba minim, the 4 species, the lulav, we face to the east because we're in the west. And the temple is in the east. But if you were in the temple, you would face to the west. So you're going to be east of it, looking to the west, looking towards the Holy of Holies. And so priest with hands underneath, the worshiper with hands on top, they're going to wave it 3 times. And he's reciting as they do this. 3 times to the west, 3 times to the north, 3 times behind him back to the east, 3 times to the north, to the south, 3 times to heaven, and 3 times to earth. Now, he has to finish his recitation. And so, this is called tenufa, or the wave offering. It says, a wandering Aramean was my father, and he went down to Egypt and sojourned there few in number, and he became there a nation, great, mighty, and populous. And the Egyptians dealt ill with us and afflicted us and laid upon us hard bondage. And we cried to the Lord God of our fathers, and the Lord heard our voice and looked on our affliction and our toil and our oppression. And the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm and with great terribleness and with signs and with wonders. And he brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And now, behold, I brought the firstfruits of the land, which you, O Lord, have given me. And you shall set it down before the Lord your God, and worship before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice in every good thing which the Lord your God has given you, and your house, and the Levite, and the stranger that is among you. Now, I want to show you one more thing before we close this video. I want to show you how it's placed and where it's placed in reference to the altar. So let's go to the altar and we'll take a look. All right, so we have some of our models here. So let's examine what we have. Here is a temple building, okay? And in front of it, we have the altar. To the south is where the ramp is located. So this would be your eastern side, this would be your northern side, southern side, and to the west is going to be the temple building. Now, why did I show you that? Because the gifts are taken to a very special place. And it's not just a matter that they're put around the altar, but it specifies in the scripture where they are to be taken. So here I have this is a larger model of the altar. Here we have the kevish, or the ramp, and around the base there is around the bottom we have the base called the yesod, means foundation. It actually only goes on this western side a little bit, on the southern side right here. There is none over here and none on the eastern side. On the northern side we have the yesod, western side fully, and then just this little section on the southern side. Now, a lot of our ceremonies with the temple take place right in this section, okay? So we always want to pay attention to where something is done. There are 2 little holes here that are like nostrils that would pour blood and water, or wine and water, down during the Festival of Shavuot. So let me read to you. This is going to be from, the Tractate Bikurim. It says, while the basket was still on his shoulder, he read from, I profess this day to the Lord your God until the end of the passage. Rabbi Yehuda says, until a wandering Aramaean was my father. When he reached a wandering Aramaean was my father, he took down the basket from his shoulder, held it by its rim, and the priest placed his hand underneath it, just as I showed you, and waved it and read from a wandering Aramaean was my father until the end of the passage, and placed it by the side of the altar, and he prostrated and went out. Okay, so we have the specific location that it was placed was right here. So I wanted you to be able to see it. But you have to picture the temple building is right here. So it's going to be closest to the temple on the southern side. All right. You know, people say, I don't know that you need that much detail. Anything that God gives you, you need. Anything that he gave you, every detail you want to know, why is it done there, what is its significance, it's going to be a key to something down the way. So you want to get all this information in there so that when that comes along, then you go, wow, that's it. I see why. I understand something I didn't understand before. Okay, so we have, just read a few closing remarks here. Originally, anyone who knew how to recite, recited. Whoever did not know how to recite, they read it to him. When they refrained from bringing, they ordained that it should be read to both those who knew and to those who did not do. The rich brought their bikurim in silver and gold baskets, and the poor brought them in wicker baskets of peeled willow branches, and the baskets of the bikurim were given to the priest. Rabbi Shimon ben Nana says, one decorates the bikurim with other than the 7 species. Rabbi Akiva says, one decorates the bikurim only with the 7 species. And I believe that that is all that we have out of here. Now I want to go to another book. This is a tremendous book. It's called Colorful Ceremonies of the Beis, B-E-I-S, Hamikdash. It's the Ashkenaz pronunciation of the temple, Beit Hamikdash. And this is based upon the information from the Rambam or Moses Maimonides. And here it has about the first fruits. It's going to give you the same information that we've kind of gone through. But I want to go to the concluding paragraph because this just thrilled me. It says overnight, even after they had brought their bikurim, the farmers could not return to their villages immediately. They still had to perform the mitzvah of Linah, that's spelled L-I-N-A-H. Every time anyone visited the Beit HaMikdash and brought a sacrifice, they had to stay in Jerusalem overnight and could return home only the next morning. Yet visitors do not have to pay for lodgings, since the holy city of Jerusalem belonged to all the Shevatim, to all the tribes. And so, anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed looking at the offering of the first fruits, the bikurim. There are so many references that are fun to discover in the scriptures, like Jeremiah chapter 2, where it calls Israel the bikurim. They were the first fruits to the Lord. And that same passage is linked to the Festival of Shavuot. Go and see what you can find. In the words of Hillel, go and study. Shalom. Shalom. I hope you enjoyed the teaching we just went through. We have more that we have planned, but I'd like to show you my newest book. This is called Measure the Pattern, Volume 1. It deals with the latest research on the Holy Temple. It shows definitively exactly where the temple building was, all the various structures, the courtyards, and more than I can describe here. Go to our website. There's a link below and check the book out.